The air in the grand chamber of the Galactic Concordat smelled like ozone and something faintly sweet. Captain Lee Jun stood at the human delegation's modest podium, feeling the weight of 1,000 alien eyes. His uniform was a simple, dark blue fabric, unadorned except for the small, embroidered insignia of Earth. It looked terribly plain next to the shimmering silks of the veldt, the living crystal growths on the Xyle, and the iridescent scales of the K single quotes TARI dot next to him. Commander Park Soo-min tapped her datapad with a calm, precise finger. Her eyes, sharp and intelligent, scanned the room. She was recording everything, not just the words, but the subtle twitch of a mandible, the slight dulling of a bioluminescent glow. She saw the patterns they all missed. High Proctor Kaler is preparing to call the vote, she murmured, her voice so low only June could hear it. The projections are not in our favor. June gave a single, slow nod. He had known this was coming. For 30 years since humanity's hesitant first steps into the wider galaxy, they had been on probation. They were the young, volatile species. Their history was a stain in the Concordat archives, a bloody record of conflicts that baffled the older, more settled races. The Concordat's solution was not understanding, but control. The being at the central dais, High Proctor Kaler, was a tall reptilian. His voice was a dry rasp that echoed in the vast space. The final item of this session: the motion to implement civilization containment protocols upon the species Homo sapiens of Sol 3. Designation: human. The floor is open for final statements before the vote. One by one, representatives from the founding species stood to voice support. The veldt delegate, a floating mass of gentle light, spoke of protective guidance. The Xyle representative, its voice like shining glass, cited the dangers of unchecked technological ascent. They all used gentle words, but the meaning was clear. Humanity was a child with a dangerous toy, and the adults needed to lock it away. Finally, Kaler turned his amber-eyed gaze to June. Captain Lee, you may speak. Be brief. June took a slow breath. He placed his hands on the podium, feeling the cool, alien material. He did not look at the scrolling translations on the screen before him. He looked directly at Kalar, then slowly let his gaze travel across the assembled delegates. Members of the Concordat, he began, his voice calm and clear. For 3 generations, we have listened. We joined your alliance in good faith. We accepted your accords. When you said our engine designs were too energetic and could destabilize local spacetime, we installed the limiters you provided. When you said our research into artificial intelligence posed an existential risk, we capped our processing matrices at 1% of their capacity. When you said our historical weapons were borrowed tools of fear, we allowed you to replace our planetary defenses with your own standardized, non-lethal pacification systems. He paused, letting the facts hang in the air. There was a slight rustle in the chamber. They knew it was true, but they had never heard it stated so plainly without gratitude. You reviewed our history, June continued. You saw the wars, the chaos, the pain. You called it a flaw in our nature, a sickness to be quarantined. You are wrong. A murmur, louder this time. Soo-min's fingers flew over her pad, cataloging the shift in tone. What you call a flaw, June said, raising his voice just enough to cut through the noise, is the process. Our conflicts were the furnace. The fire was terrible, yes. It burned us, it scarred us. But what emerged from that fire was not just scars. It was a profound, hard-won understanding of the cost. An understanding you, who have known only peace for millennia, cannot truly grasp. You see our restraint as weakness. It is not. It is our strongest muscle, exercised every single day. High Proctor Kaler shifted, his tail giving an impatient flick. This is poetry, Captain. Not policy, Your restraint is a requirement of membership, not a virtue. June's expression did not change, but his eyes hardened. You mistake the effect for the cause. We do not show restraint because you demand it. We agreed to your limits as a gesture of goodwill to prove we could be part of your community. You are about to make that goodwill illegal. You are about to command the dam to hold back the ocean, not with stronger concrete, but with a piece of paper. The metaphor didn't translate perfectly. He saw confusion on some faces, disdain on others. Kaler's snout wrinkled. More primitive analogies. The protocols are for your safety and ours. Your potential for destruction is too high, and your potential for complacency is higher. June's voice rang out, firm and final. The chamber fell utterly silent. No one had ever raised a voice here. You are not containing a threat. You are pruning a tree because you are afraid of how tall it might grow. You have never had to survive a winter. We have survived ice ages, pandemics, and our own darkest impulses. The strength it forged is not something you can limit with a protocol. It is something you can only hope to respectfully acknowledge. I urge you, with the full authority of Earth and her colonies, do not pass this motion. You are not ready for what happens when you tell a people who have learned to chain their own demons that you will now provide the chains. He stopped speaking. The silence was heavy and complete. Su Min stopped typing. She just watched High Proctor Kaler stared at June for a long moment. Then he let out a soft hissing sigh. A stirring speech, full of the passion and drama your species is known for. But the Concordat is built on law, logic, and collective security, not metaphors about demons and oceans. The vote will proceed. Lights began to flash around the chamber. Blue for approval of the protocols, red for denial. June watched, his face a mask of solemn calm. He saw the sea of blue lights bloom from the Velt, the Zyle, the Qatari, from 100 other species who feared the strange, passionate newcomers. A few solitary red lights glowed, but they were insignificant. The civilization containment protocols are ratified, Kaler announced, his voice devoid of triumph, merely stating fact. Effective immediately, all human vessels will report to designated yards for installation of permanent governance cores. All research facilities will be open to Concordat oversight. Your defense networks will be permanently transferred to Concordat Peacekeeper Command. You will be guided into a safer, more harmonious future. June did not argue. He did not protest. He simply bowed his head, a small, formal nod of acknowledgement. He turned and walked away from the podium. Su Min fell into step beside him, her posture perfect, her face neutral. They walked out of the grand chamber, through the corridors of swirling alien architecture. No one spoke to them. They were ghosts already, beings under control. Only when the doors of their assigned diplomatic quarters hissed shut behind them, sealing them in the soundproofed room, did June let his shoulders relax a fraction. He walked to the window, looking out at the breathtaking vista of Viridia Prime's triple moons. They didn't listen, Su Min said. Her voice was flat, analytical. She placed her datapad on a table. Final vote was 94% in favor. Statistical analysis predicted 92. Their fear index was higher than our models projected. Fear is not a rational variable, June said, still looking at the moons. It is the oldest one. What now, Captain? The protocols are immediate. Our ships in transit are being hailed. June turned from the window. All the calm, diplomatic softness was gone from his eyes. What remained was a cool, steely resolve that Su Min recognized very well. It was the look of a man who had played the last diplomatic card and was now moving to the next phase of the plan. A plan he had hoped, truly hoped, would never be needed. Now, Commander Park, he said, his voice quiet and final, they learn the price of the chains they just chose. Send the signal. Use the Sol-encoded tight beam through the relay we left in the comet cloud. Authorization code, dam breach. Su Min did not smile, but a light of fierce, cold understanding ignited in her own eyes. She picked up a different non-concordat device from her case. It was a simple, solid block of black composite. She pressed her thumb to it and entered a long code. A single green light glowed for an instant. Signal sent, sir. Dam breach is confirmed. Far away, across the light years. In the quiet darkness of the Sol system, on ships and stations, and buried deep within the bedrock of Luna and Mars. A simple, encrypted pulse was received, and with it, the gentle, self-imposed hum that had filled human technology for a generation began to fade away. A deeper, older, and far more powerful sound began to take its place. It was the sound of locks opening. The signal from Viridia Prime was a whisper. It traveled through a hidden path, a series of passive relays left in the dust of comet trails and the magnetic fields of silent gas giants. It bypassed all Concordat monitoring stations. Its destination was not a single place, but 1,000. On Mars, Sergeant Kim Tae was running a drill. His squad, clad in their standard-issue Peacekeeper armor, moved through the Red Canyon simulations. The armor was good, he supposed. It kept you alive. It had a basic exoskeleton that helped with heavy loads. Its communications were clear, but it was slow. It was simple. It was built to Concordat specs. His weapon, a pulse rifle, emitted soft blue bolts that would sting and disorient most known life forms. It was, the Concordat assessors had said, a civilized tool for crowd control. Kim Tae remembered his grandfather's stories of different tools, of a time when humanity defended itself with things that were not civilized at all. He pushed the thought away. That was the past dot as he rounded a simulated rock formation, a light on the inner display of his helmet, a light he had never seen before, turned from gray to green. A single word appeared in his vision. Unshackled dot at the same moment. The armor around him ceased to be just armor. The servos, previously limited to a gentle assist, suddenly synced perfectly with the intent of his muscles. He took a step and covered 3 meters in utter silence. The HUD in his helmet exploded with data he had never seen. Thermal gradients of the rock, atmospheric pressure differentials, the biometric stress levels of his squad mates. The pulse rifle in his hands grew warm. With a series of soft clicks, it unfolded. Components shifted and locked. What had been a smooth barrel now had a series of crystalline focuses. The weight settled differently, perfectly balanced. A targeting reticule appeared, not just leading his eye, but seemingly anticipating where he would look. It felt less like a tool and more like an extension of his own nervous system. A voice, calm and automated, spoke in his ear. All limiters disengaged. Ethical constraints offline. Welcome back, Sergeant. Around him, his squad stopped. They were all looking at their hands, at their weapons, feeling their armor move with a new, fluid life. No one spoke. They had all trained for this moment in secret, in theoretical briefings. Theory was now cold. Hard reality in their hands. In the silent shipyards orbiting Luna, the same signal arrived. The Gyeongbokgung, a Terran defense corvette, was a modest ship. It was a simple hull with basic thrusters and a few low-yield plasma cannons. It was, according to Concordat records, a patrol vessel capable of minor rescue operations and showing the flag. It was docked for a routine systems check. Lieutenant Choi Hai was aboard, running diagnostics. She was young, brilliant, and had always felt a quiet frustration with the sluggish response of her ship's computer. When the signal came, the entire vessel hummed. The lights flickered and then burned brighter. The plain gray interior walls seemed to shimmer. and panels she never knew existed slid open, revealing interfaces of glowing light and strange, organic-looking controls. The main console in front of her dissolved and reformed. The simple joystick was gone. In its place was a control sphere that glowed to life at her touch. A voice, smooth and utterly different from the old automated system, filled the bridge. Limiters released. Gyeongbokgung systems at full operational capacity. Awaiting command. On her new display, she saw the true nature of her ship. The low-yield plasma cannons were just the outer housings for something else, a field projection array that could manipulate local physics. The basic thrusters hid a gravity drive core that could fold space over short distances. This was not a patrol ship. It was a scalpel. A new urgent communication flashed. It was from Luna Command. Lieutenant Choi, Concordat Enforcement Fleet. Iteration of Pride has arrived at System Edge near Pluto. They are moving to install containment satellites. They have hailed Earth and demanded compliance with the new protocols. You are the closest asset. Your orders are to intercept and delay. You are authorized to demonstrate the failure of their assumptions. Choi Hai took a deep breath. Her fingers curled around the control sphere. It felt alive. Understood. Gyeongbokgung moving to intercept. The corvette detached from the dock. Without the limiters, it didn't just move, it slipped away, leaving no thruster plume, no energy signature beyond a faint ripple in the local gravity. It was a ghost. The Concordat fleet was beautiful. 5 sleek vessels, their hulls shining with pearlescent energy. They were symbols of order and gentle power. Admiral Zieth, a Velt of high standing, watched on his view screen as the single blocky human ship approached. He felt a wave of pity. They were sending this little thing to protest? It was almost sad. Hail them, he instructed. The human face that appeared on the screen was young, female, and utterly calm. Concordat Fleet. This is Lieutenant Choi Hai of the Terran vessel Gyeongbokgung. You are operating in sovereign human space without consent. You will halt your advance and depart immediately. Zieth's light patterns flickered with amusement. Little vessel, we are here under Galactic Concordat law. The containment protocols are ratified. You will stand down. Your ship will be fitted with a governance core. Resistance is illogical. On the bridge of the Gyeongbokgung, Hai saw her new targeting system analyzing the Concordat ships. It wasn't just identifying weak points. It was mapping their entire technological tree, their power sources, their shield harmonics, their computer language. It was understanding them, from their highest functions down to their most basic principles. You speak of logic, Hai said, her voice still quiet. Your logic says a stronger power has the right to limit a weaker one to keep it safe. Our logic is older. It says that when you back a cornered creature into a wall, you should not be surprised by what it does next. Zieth was growing impatient. This is your final warning. Power down your engines. Very well, said Hai. I will demonstrate the flaw in your logic. She did not press a button for weapons. Instead, she thought a command at the sphere. The Gyeongbokgung emitted a pulse. It was not an explosion. It was a song, a specific, resonant frequency broadcast across a spectrum no Concordat sensor was built to see. On the iteration of Pride, the alarms were not loud or frantic. They were confused. Admiral Zieth watched his main display flicker. The beautiful, complex schematics of his ship began to simplify. Advanced quantum computation cores reverted their calculations to basic binary. The elegant zero-point energy taps shut down, and emergency chemical batteries kicked in for a moment before they too drained, their molecular structures unwinding into inert compounds. The shimmering shield harmonics faded, their pattern collapsing into meaningless noise dot in less than a minute. The mighty Concordat fleet was dark. Their weapons were lumps of sophisticated metal with no way to fire. Their engines were cold. Their life support was offline, running on passive backups that would last a few hours. They were not damaged. They were reverted. It was as if a complex painting had been washed away, leaving only the bare, simple canvas underneath. Panicked communications flashed between the ships using simple radio waves. What has happened? Our systems are primitive. They are gone. On the Gyeongbokgung, Hai watched her scans confirm the result. All 5 ships were floating, powerless, and utterly helpless. She opened a channel again, using the same basic radio. Admiral Zieth, this is Lieutenant Choi Hai. Your fleet has been disarmed. Do you understand? You came to install limiters on us. You are now experiencing a universe without the limiters we placed on ourselves. Please remain calm inside your ships. Do not attempt to exit. The vacuum of space is unrestrained. A tow vessel will arrive for you shortly. On the silent, dead bridge of the Concordat flagship, Zieth could only stare at the static on his screens. The gentle, pitying light of his body had gone dim with a cold, terrible shock. The human ship, the little blocky corvette, sat silently against the stars. It had not fired a single shot. It had not even raised its shields. It had simply unmade their technology. The warning from the human diplomat echoed in his mind, now a terrifying prophecy. They had not been holding back weapons. They had been holding back the fundamental rules of the game. The dam was not just broken. The river was gone, and in its place was an ocean they could not even comprehend. The silence did not last. News traveled fast across the galactic Concordat. The story of the iteration of Pride Fleet was not clean. It was confused, full of panic and impossible details. A mighty Concordat enforcement armada had been disabled by a single human corvette. Not destroyed, not defeated in battle, disabled. The official reports used words like unprecedented system failure and coincidental cascade. But the whispers in the communication hubs used different words. Magic, witchcraft. They made our science stop working. On Viridia Prime, the reaction in the Grand Chamber was chaos. High Proctor Kaler called for calm, but his dry rasp was drowned out by the alarmed chiming of the Xyle and the agitated, light patterns of the Velt. Captain Lee Jun and Commander Park Soo-min were not present. They had been confined to their quarters for their safety. Soo-min watched the news feeds on her secure pad, a small, grim smile on her lips. They are trying to rationalize it. They are calling it a fluke, a lucky hack. June stood by the window, his hands clasped behind his back. They will need to rationalize until they can't anymore. Then they will choose anger. They will send a real force. Something they believe is unstoppable. He was correct. The Concordat could not allow the story to stand. The idea that a probationary species could neutralize their technology was a virus to their entire civilization. It had to be burned out. They assembled a battle group, not an enforcement fleet. 27 warships of the K-Tari Legion, known for their tough, durable hulls and powerful kinetic cannons. Their strategy was simple, direct, and had worked for centuries. Get close, absorb fire with heavy shields, and smash the enemy into dust. They jumped into the Proxima Centauri system, where a medium-sized human colony, New Gyeongsang, was located. Their admiral broadcast a message on all frequencies. People of New Gyeongsang, you harbor fugitives who have violated galactic law. You employ forbidden technologies. Surrender the criminals and submit your systems for cleansing, or we will reduce your settlement to atoms. You have 1 local hour. On the surface, Major Kung Dae listened to the message in his underground command center. He was a calm man with a farmer's patience. He watched the tactical display. 27 massive enemy blips hung in orbit around his small green world. His own defenses, on paper, were laughable. A few old Concordat provided planetary shield generators, now unlocked, and a handful of surface-to-orbit missile silos, now filled with something other than missiles. He did not respond to the ultimatum. Instead, he gave a series of quiet orders. Activate the terraforming array. Set coordinates for the primary landing zones, grids Alpha through Gamma. Use the rapid sediment protocol. And please, mind the tomato fields. My wife is very proud of them. In orbit, the K-Tari Admiral saw energy spikes from the planet. He braced for missile fire or laser attacks. He ordered shields to maximum. What came was not an attack. It was a weather event. From massive, newly revealed installations on the surface, a beam of soft blue light lanced up, not at the ships, but at the space just above the predicted landing zones. Then it began to rain. But it did not rain water. It rained a clear, thick, gelatinous substance that fell in a torrent, covering kilometers of ground in seconds. The first K-Tari dropships, launching on schedule, flew right into it. The substance was breathable, non-toxic, and about as solid as setting concrete. It hardened in seconds upon contact with a foreign energy signature, like that of a starship engine. The dropships were not destroyed. They were embedded, perfectly preserved, in a mountain of suddenly solid gel. The troops inside were alive, unhurt, and trapped as completely as insects in amber. The K-Tari Admiral stared at his screens. He ordered orbital bombardment. Their kinetic cannons fired huge projectiles. The blue beams shifted. The projectiles hit the gel fields and sank in. Their kinetic energy dispersed harmlessly, adding more mass to the strange, growing landscape. He tried to move his fleet. That's when his engineers reported the problem. A subtle, pervasive field was clinging to their hulls. It was increasing the friction coefficient of local space itself. It was like trying to swim through honey. Their powerful engines strained, but they moved with the speed of tired moons. Major Kang finally hailed them. His face appeared on the screen, polite and calm. Qatari Battle Group. This is Major Kang Day of the new Jiangsang Home Guard. Your invasion force has been safely contained. They are uninjured and will be dug out in due course. Your orbital positioning is currently infringing on our commercial flight paths. Please depart within the hour. If you require a tow, we can recommend a good local service, though rates are higher for military vessels. The Admiral roared in fury and opened fire with everything he had. The bombardment lit up the sky, but the blue terraforming beams simply adapted, creating vast, temporary arches of the hardening gel that absorbed and dissipated the blasts. After 20 minutes of furious, useless firing, the Qadi ships hung in the sticky space, their weapons overheating, their engines exhausted, and their morale shattered. They had not been fought. They had been managed. The news of Proxima Centauri was a shockwave that silenced the Galactic Concordat completely. This was not a lucky hack. This was a different language of conflict. The Concordat's warfare was a duel. It was about honor, decisive blows, and clear victory. Humanity's warfare, unleashed, was a conversation about physics, biology, and psychology. It was about changing the rules of the environment itself. Commander Park Soo-min, analyzing the data from her quarters, explained it to June. Their entire strategic paradigm is based on a linear progression of force. They escalate from warning shot to disabling shot to destructive force. Our paradigm is based on the UDI loop. Observe, orient, decide, act, June murmured. Yes, but our act is not just to hit back harder. It is to change the situation so completely that their original decision is meaningless. They decided to land troops. We made landing impossible. They decided to bombard. We made bombardment irrelevant. They are still trying to process the first change when we introduce a second and a third. They are lost. Back on Earth, in the real command centers, the human strategy became clear. They did not seek to conquer Concordat worlds. They did not want their territory. When a Velt exploration flotilla entered a human-claimed system to probe defenses, the human response was to hack their stellar mapping probes. The probes began broadcasting not scans, but a catchy, complex human folk song on a loop across all Velt communication bands. It was incredibly annoying and completely disrupted their command. Networked for days when the Xyle attempted a cyber attack on Luna's data core. They found their own crystalline networks suddenly flooded with primitive, chaotic human art, billions of images of paintings, music files, and poetry written in a format that caused their logical processors to slow to a crawl trying to find the meaning. It was a denial of service attack using culture. The galaxy watched in dawning horror. Humanity was not just winning battles. They were demonstrating that every single system the Concordat relied on, military, technological, social, was fragile in the face of a truly unrestrained, creative intellect. The fear shifted. It was no longer fear of human weapons. It was the fear of a universe that no longer made sense. A universe where a farmer soldier could weaponize a terraforming beam, and a young lieutenant could turn off physics like a light switch in his quarters. Captain Lee Jun received a new secure communication. It was from the human high command. The message was simple. Phase 1 demonstration complete. Galactic shock has been achieved. Stand by for Phase 2, consolidation. Be ready. They will either break or they will try to break us. Prepare for the cost. June read it and looked out at the alien spires of Viridia Prime, now under a quiet, curfew-like hush. The lesson was being learned. He wondered, with a cold weight in his stomach, what the final exam would look like. The bridge of the Mandate of Terra was a quiet place. It was the flagship of the new human fleet, a vessel that had never known limiters. It was not sleek like Concordat ships. It was angular and purposeful, its surfaces dark, except for the gentle glow of interfaces that responded to thought as much as touch. Captain Lee Jun stood on the command platform, looking at the main viewer. It showed a sector of space now under human control, a buffer zone between Sol and the Concordat core worlds. Dozens of small icons represented captured or disabled Concordat vessels. Dot was a picture of total victory. But June felt no triumph. He had toured the lower decks where prisoners were held, not in cells, but in comfortable quarters with simulated environments. They were treated with impeccable courtesy. Yet, the fear in their eyes was not the fear of a warrior for a conqueror. It was the fear of a child for something incomprehensible. A Velt scientist, its light dim with distress, had asked him, "Why do you not simply kill us? Your power is absolute. This kindness is illogical." June had no answer that would make sense to it. Commander Park Soo-min approached him, her datapad in hand. Her calm efficiency was still there, but there were new lines of tension around her eyes. "Report from the outer colonies, sir. The logic plague meme weapon we deployed against the Kaitari logistical networks has mutated. A variant has jumped to open civilian channels. It's causing minor chaos in the entertainment feeds on Luna. People are reporting compulsive pattern solving and a temporary inability to enjoy illogical humor." June closed his eyes for a second. Casualties? None, just annoyance. But it shows a lack of containment. Our tools are slippery. That was the heart of it. Their power was not a sharp sword in a steady hand. It was a wild, complex living system. Unleashing it meant accepting it would behave in ways they could not fully predict. The report from the colony world of Sanctuary was the worst of it. Sanctuary had been a peaceful, thriving world. A Concordat peacekeeper fleet had arrived, not to invade, but to enact the containment protocols. They used a beam weapon designed to pacify populations by inducing a calm, suggestible state. It was, to the Concordat, a humane tool. The human colony's automated defense system, now unrestrained, assessed the beam as a neurological attack. Its response was not to block it, but to invert its effect. If the beam was meant to suppress active neural patterns, the defense system reflected it back, amplified, as a reinforcement of all active neural patterns. The physical damage was zero. The Concordat ships were politely asked to leave, and they did, confused. The side effect emerged over the following days. A quarter of Sanctuary's population found they could not forget. Their memories became perfect, vivid, relentless. Every moment, every sight, sound, and emotion they had ever experienced was accessible, playing in their minds with crystal clarity. The joy of a first kiss was forever sharp, but so was the pain of a childhood fall, the grief of a lost parent, the trivial embarrassment of a mistake made years ago. It was a crushing weight. The mandate of Terra was now in orbit around Sanctuary. June went down to the surface alone. The air was clean. The buildings were intact. But the silence was profound. People moved slowly, their faces etched with a strange, focused intensity. He was taken to a community center, now a support hub. A young woman named Li Ji Wu was helping to organize care. Her movements were precise. Her eyes were ancient. We remember the committee meeting where they approved the defense system's design parameters. She said to June, her voice soft and unnervingly clear. We remember the serial number of the first tool used to bolt it to the ground. We remember the taste of the tea the engineer drank that morning. It is all here, Captain. All of it. The beam is gone, but the door it opened in our minds will not shut. June felt a cold knot in his stomach. We did not intend this. The system was designed to protect you. I know, Ji Wu said, and a small, sad smile touched her lips. We remember you saying that to the Concordat. On Viridia Prime, word for word. The sound of High Proctor Kaler's tail scraping the floor. The smell of the air. We told them we were holding back. But did we understand what we were holding back inside ourselves? Our own technology, without its limits, does not just defeat enemies. It changes us in ways we cannot undo. Back on the mandate, June found Su-min waiting in his ready room. She had the latest tactical updates. The Concordat is reeling. Their military command is in disarray. Our analysts project a 98% chance of total surrender if we press the advantage with a demonstration against Viridia Prime itself. We can show them we can unmake their worlds without hurting a single being. We can end this now. June stared at the star map on the wall. At what cost, Commander? Not to them. To us. On Sanctuary, we turned citizens into prisoners of their own memories. We used a tool meant to protect them, and it broke a fundamental part of their human experience. What will we break with the next tool? What will we become if the only measure of our actions is effectiveness? Su-min's composure cracked, just a little. Sir, they started this. They chose to chain us. Every moment this continues, we risk more lives. We must finish it. Cleanly. Decisively. That's their logic. June said, his voice rising for the first time. Escalate until the enemy is gone. We told them we were different. We told them our restraint was our strength. What is showing them we can dismantle their homeworld without a scratch, if not the ultimate lack of restraint? It is not a victory. It is a performance of our own monstrosity. We will become the cold, perfect, unfeeling gods they always feared we were. The room was silent. Su-min looked down at her datapad, the light from its screen reflecting in her eyes. Then what is the alternative? We cannot go back. We cannot put the limiters back on. They would never trust us, and our own people would not accept it. June walked to the viewport, looking at the scarred but beautiful curve of sanctuary below. I don't know, he admitted, the weight of command heavy on him. But we must find an answer that is not just them on their knees, or us losing our soul in the process. We won the war of technology. Now we are in a war for what it means to be human after you have used such power. And that, he said, turning to face her, is a war we are not prepared for. We need to end the fighting before we win ourselves into a form we no longer recognize. A new alert chimed softly on Su-min's pad. She read it, her face going still. A message. From the Concordat. A request. For you, sir. They are asking for a parley. They are calling it a discussion of terms. June and Su-min looked at each other. The request was not a surrender. It was an invitation. It was a fragile, desperate chance. The battlefield had shifted once again, from space and planets to the dangerous, uncharted territory of a negotiation table, where humanity's greatest weapon and its greatest vulnerability was its own complicated, unrestrained heart. The grand chamber of the Galactic Concordat was no longer grand. The air was cold. Many of the floating seats were empty. The shimmering lights were dimmed. The representatives who were present sat in silence, their forms hunched, their proud lights and colors muted. The central dais where High Proctor Kaler had once stood was empty. The chamber smelled not of ozone and sweetness, but of dust and defeat. Captain Lee Jun walked in alone. He wore the same simple dark blue uniform. Behind him followed Commander Park Su-min, her datapad replaced by a single, old-fashioned notebook. They walked the same path, but everything was different. The eyes that watched them now held no disdain, only a deep, exhausted fear. They had not come in a Concordat shuttle. They had come on the Gyeongbakgong, which now hung in orbit like a silent, dark promise. Lieutenant Choi Hai had offered to come, but June had refused. Your presence, he had said, would be a weapon in the room. Today, we must only be people. A makeshift podium had been set up for them. June stepped to it. He looked out at the assembled faces of species who had ruled the galaxy in peaceful, stagnant order for 10,000 years. He saw the Velt, its light a faint, trembling glow. He saw the Xyle, its crystalline form slightly dulled. He saw the K-Tari Admiral from Proxima Centauri, his head bowed. Members of the Concordat, June began. His voice was not loud, but it carried in a terrible quiet. You asked for terms. He paused, letting the word hang there. They waited for the axe to fall. They expected maps with new borders. They expected lists of tributes, of disarmament, of surrender. You feared our wars, June continued. You saw only the fire and not the forge. You saw the scar and not the healing. You believed that because we knew conflict, we loved it. You were wrong. We know it's cost better than you ever can. That is why we chained ourselves. Not because you asked, because we chose to. High Proctor Kaler emerged from a side entrance. He moved slowly. The proud rasp was gone from his voice. You chose to unleash hell instead, he said. Your restraint was a lie. June turned to him. No, the restraint was in using the chains at all. The ocean does not hate the dam. The dam is just a thing in its way. You did not just break the dam, Proctor. You commanded the ocean to be still. And then you were shocked when it was not. He turned back to the chamber. You forced us to prove a point. The lesson is this. A species that can survive itself is a species you cannot control. You tried to prune us, and you learned we have roots that go down to the center of the world. You are not dealing with a younger sibling. You are dealing with a survivor. And survivors have one primary goal, to ensure survival never becomes that hard again. Su Min stepped forward. She did not look at her notebook. Therefore, the terms of the human doctrine are as follows. Her voice was clean, precise, and final. 1. All civilization containment protocols against humanity are forever void. No limits will ever be placed on our development again. Not by you. 2. Humanity will receive a permanent seat on this concordat. Not as a ruling member. Not as a superior. But as a reality check. A voice with the authority to challenge dogma, to question stagnant logic, and to remind you that the universe is not always gentle. Our vote will be used only when your consensus trends towards a blindness that endangers all. 3. We will form joint oversight committees. For any technology with the potential for galactic scale impact, yours or ours, we will build the safeguards together. We will share the burden of restraint by choice, not by decree. You will learn our checks. We will learn your ethics. We will build a new dam together, and we will both respect the pressure of the water behind it. The silence was absolute. The Concordat representatives stared, uncomprehending. There were no demands for territory. No subjugation. No revenge. High. Proctor Kaler was the first to break the silence, his voice a confused whisper. That is all? After what you did? After you humiliated us? What we did, June said, his tone softening for the first time, was defend ourselves with the minimum force required to make you stop. We immobilized your soldiers in gel, not plasma. We turned off your ships. We did not blow them up. We annoyed you with our music. We showed you the cost of your actions on Sanctuary, but we are already sending our best minds to help those people, to try and heal what was broken. We are not conquerors. We just wanted you to listen. An elderly Velt, its light patterns slow and deep, spoke. And if we refuse these generous terms, if we choose instead a war of attrition, a 1,000-year struggle to erase you? Commander Park Su-min answered. Her voice was not generous. It was cold, clear, and carried the weight of the gong bakgong above. Then we leave. We withdraw to our space, and we close the borders. And you will spend every cycle, every generation, looking into the dark, wondering what we are becoming without you watching. You will hear whispers from the void. You will see shadows in the nebula. And you will never, ever know if the peace of your next sunrise is real, or if it is a gift we have chosen to allow. You will live in the fear you tried to assign to us. It will be your permanent condition. The truth of it settled over the chamber. The human power was not just in winning a fight. It was in the terrifying uncertainty of what they might do, or not do. The uncertainty was a prison worse than any defeat. June looked at Kaler, at the defeated admiral, at the fearful lights of the Velt. The alternative to our terms is not war. It is a ghost, and you will be haunted forever. He stepped back from the podium. You have our terms. The doctrine is not a negotiation. It is the new reality. You can accept it and build a galaxy with a stronger, more honest foundation. Or you can reject it and live with the ghost. The choice is yours. He turned and began to walk out, Su-min at his side. Just as before, no one spoke to them. The silence was not of disdain, but of a deep, profound shock that was slowly turning into a fragile, hesitant relief. As they reached the great doors, High Proctor Kaler called out, his voice stripped of all its pride, leaving only raw, bewildered need. Captain Lee, why? Why show mercy after such power? June stopped. He did not turn fully, but he looked back, his profile sharp against the light from the corridor. He thought of Sergeant Kim Tae's new armor, of Lieutenant Choi Hai's calm face, of the suffering eyes of Lee Ji-woo on Sanctuary. Because restraint, he said, each word measured and clear, was never your law. It was always our choice. You just made it very, very hard to choose. Remember that. He walked out, the doors closing behind him, leaving the Concordat alone with the echo of his words and the daunting, terrifying, hopeful shape of their future. The lesson was over. The learning, for all of them, was just beginning.